A lot of naughty jokes can be made to make this intro funny using the words slide and flip. But you know better than to expect rude jokes and silliness from me. This is serious. This is a comparison between the Anbernic RG slide and the Retroid pocket flip. Whew, managed to get through that without any naughty jokes. These two devices have a similar goal, to be unique and evoke nostalgia. The Flip 2 obviously reminding us of a Nintendo 3DS, and the RG slide reminding us of the slide phones from the 2000s. I just want to thank LITNXT for providing the RG slide for today's video. Also, you may notice that my Retroid Pocket Flip 2 has no clock design on the top of it. That's because, thanks to PCBware, I have been able to print a high-quality lid replacement for it. I printed it in various colors and ended up going for this gray one, which I think looks great. PCBware offer high quality 3D printing in a myriad of materials, along with their own custom PCB manufacturing services, CNC milling, and even injection molding and sheet metal fabrication. I've been quite impressed with their service. The service agents don't always know that I'm a YouTuber making something for promotional purposes, and they've always been super helpful, always helping to, if there are any issues with my SDL files or anything like that. So I want to thank PCBware for sponsoring this channel and for sponsoring today's video. Please check out PCBware for any of your project needs. So let's start with the Anbernic with what I'm calling the wins over the Retroid. Anbernic have used this AI overlay for what they're calling a game snap, and so that you can enable this AI floating translation tool, which worked really well in my Japanese version of Street Fighter for the 3DS. Anbernic go a long way to set the device up for you, and I especially like the 3DS and Nintendo DS overlays. This large 4x3 screen does allow for decent layouts for those two screen systems. I also fired up a few Pico 8 games, and because again the screen is so big, they actually look really good on this. You know, it's a square system, but it looks really nice on this device. Now I must mention, I always need to mention that this is a little bit sketchy, is the fact that you just press a button, the launcher opens, and the handheld is preloaded with lots and lots of games. What's nice is that very few of these systems actually need setting up. Here and there you might need to map a control, RetroArch needs to be opened up once just for it to decompress and all that kind of thing. But for the most part, these systems kind of just work straight off the bat. So that is really handy and user-friendly, but sketchy. You're also now able to map the home button in the system menu to whatever home screen you want, whether it's ESDE or you want to use their launcher or you want to use Digishow, you can set it up there in their Android settings. And then in my other review of this handheld, I said these are some of the best controls in the retro emulation scene. I hold to that. I think the more I use it, the more I think they're some of the best. It's the best layouts and some of the best controls in the business. These joysticks aren't full joysticks, but they are very nice. The buttons are quieter than the Retroid, and that goes a long way just to it, making it more user-friendly for your daily life. And now for the Anbernic losses against the Retroid. So this white color is not very conducive to hiding the bezel. So when I got the white, I already knew this, but it was quite a shock to the system to see what a big bezel there is here compared to this side. And that just makes me feel uneasy. And also with it being white now, you can also see that there's a gap from the white to the actual screen. So there's a little gap on the LCD screen itself, and that becomes accentuated with the white body. And these inline shoulder buttons are both clicky and not conducive to 3D systems. However, I have always enjoyed Anbernic's choice of sort of form over function for these inline shoulders from the early days. It is a nice sort of retro nostalgic thing in and of itself for Anbernic, but what also I played God of War for the PS2 on the RG405M. I managed to get that running on there nice and smoothly, and I used the inline shoulder buttons without a problem. I used them like this. So I put my fingers like that. So you mostly use your L1 and R1, and then every now and again you got to curl over to use those two. And the biggest loss, kind of sort of, we'll talk about that more later on in the video, is the chipset. I thought this was the new Dimensity chipset that they're putting in all their higher end devices, but this is still the T820 chipset. And so I was wondering why my performance wasn't so good. People are raving about the Dimensity chipset working so well for GameCube and PS2 and all that sort of thing, because that is what this screen is lending itself to. And what they've done is they've crippled the performance on this for the upcoming 447, and we'll talk about that device in the future. That being said, that is a big loss because the Retroid is touting a Snapdragon chipset, but that being, okay, we'll make excuses for it later. For now, we'll just say it's bad. And then in terms of gameplay, I definitely think this is a great PS2, GameCube, and retro systems like NES and SNES gaming handheld. There are quite a few YouTube videos out now about its decent performance for GameCube and PS2. Also look up the performance of the RG556, which has the same chipset. There's a lot of information online about that. Okay, now moving on to comparing it to the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. The biggest win, I feel, with this device is the Snapdragon chipset. If you're gonna look at this, that thing is going to sway you, because it's going to play Switch, which, sketchy, whatever. But the thing about that is what it tells you is that it has the custom drivers to do that. And that also affects other emulators such as Dolphin, which does Wii and GameCube. And Azaha, which does the 3DS emulation, also has custom drivers. So that Snapdragon chipset is going to go a long way to making your experience better. But a lot of nerdy tweaking if you're not into that. But yeah, the Snapdragon chipset is one of the massive selling points on this handheldy poo. And then the flip form factor. I said in a recent video, okay, this isn't the device I spoke about, but the RG34XX-SP, this is the Miyoo Mini Flip, but these handhelds are just so good because you just flip them closed, put them in your pocket, and off you go. And that's the same with this, having it flip closed, and also the fact that it powers down so nicely when you flip it closed makes it very convenient for everyday life. Obviously it's a more expensive device, and therein lies the other little thing, but I think it makes a huge quality of life improvement, is the lanyard hole, because there's less chance of you dropping it. There's less chance of you dropping it because of that lanyard.
That is a big purpose, man.
OLED. Do not forget the power of the OLED thingamabob. I mean, just look at Aiden Walls in all his OLED glory. That is just fan-bloody-tastic. And compared to the Anbernic, it really does look fantastic. We'll talk about it in more depth later, but just to say, OLED wins every day. The blacks are deeper, the highlights are shallower, and what I mean by that is the highlights aren't as blown out. So the white portion, so if you're looking at like the white cliffs of Dover, the white is not going to be as overexposed. It's just a better screen, there's no getting around it. I'm also enjoying these buttons just as much as the Anbernic. I know I said that the Anbernic buttons are very good. These are great, and we'll talk about the downfall of them just now, but these are very, very enjoyable buttons. We've got the dome switch D-pad, and then we've got these lovely shallow rubber membrane action buttons, but they are quite clackety, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. Oh, and in testing, I did notice that the rumble motor on the Retroid is far superior. This feels like a rumble. Anbernic's rumble motors always just feel buzzy, like bzz, bzz. It's not, retro to the 2000s, because it feels like the buzz on an old flip device, a slide device. It really does. It's just bzz, bzz. It's not nice. Whereas this feels like a rumble on like a PlayStation controller. Okay, flip losses. The losses of the flip. Firstly, what the F is going on with this clock design? It's kind of like the boss's kid designed the lid and everyone was too scared to say that it's shit. It's just that. If you say in the comments you don't mind it, you are wrong. This is a terrible design. Retroid, I don't know what you were thinking, because, okay, this makes sense. I did mention in a live stream or something, maybe they did it because this gives it structural integrity, but they could have just given it ribbing. I don't know what they were thinking, because Retroid, you could have just done this again. Why didn't you do that again? Someone answer me. Give me answers. This is not cool. And then something I have noticed with time, I've left, if you've noticed, these two black marks here on my table. these two black marks are the bumpers. They have fallen out. They keep falling out because of the mod that I've done. So I need to kind of glue them in there. But they were falling out and have been falling out for a lot of users, even without the mod. And so they just aren't very well executed. They're not big enough. I don't think they're absorbing much of the force of slamming this lid shut. That is a bit of a fail there in terms of like longevity of this thing absorbing that, because that is what people are going to do. No one is going to do this. But most people will pull that face though. And then on the flip, the original flip, the red one that I pulled out to have a rant about the logo, they had an M1 and M2 on the back of the device. This doesn't have that, nor does it have a back button. So on the Retroid Pocket 5, we have a home and back button for Android purposes. This only has a home button. So they had to go back and change the settings of their Android and send an update out so that we could easily map this in RetroArch as a back button. Because if you pressed and held it to map it in RetroArch, it would just go out of RetroArch. So they've fixed that. So this does work as a back button. So it's a nice minimalist solution. But why, oh, why are there just not some more mappable buttons on here? And then for whatever reason, I think it's because of the clickiness, these shoulder buttons just feel cheap to me. I pick it up, it feels like a premium device, and then I use the shoulder buttons and I'm like, cheap. Now the action buttons, while they don't feel cheap, they actually feel very premium and lovely, as I mentioned in the positives, are very clackety. And that, I think, is a deal breaker for many people. Maybe it's the reason I haven't used this as much as I would, because Tetris for PSP is one of my favorite play-in-bed games, and I haven't used this. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not sure. You know, everyone, I think, needs quiet buttons. Some people might have a quiet commute on some fancy train somewhere in Europe. I don't know. You might play games like me next to your partner in bed. You might need to be hiding in the air vents of the person you're stalking's bedroom. Or, you know, on the back seat of the car while you wait to attack the person as they drive home. Now, gameplay is obviously excellent in terms of performance. You're going to get to play some Switch and pretty much everything else. PSP looks amazing on here. But where you'll start to get annoyed is older systems like PS2, and yeah, even older systems like the NES. In the olden days of the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, it was a novelty to have a 16:9 retro emulation device, and there weren't a lot of powerful 4:3 big screen 4:3 handhelds in the world. And things are different now, and that's the reason for making this video, comparing it to the Retroid Pocket Flip, even though it's more powerful. I think a lot of people would take a less powerful 4:3 handheld over a 16:9 handheld, especially when that less powerful still means they can play most of their retro games all the way up to PS2. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's not how big your processor is, it's what you can do with it. Okay, so let's bring this to a very serious close. So when you put these screens side by side, you can't deny that the OLED has more depth, the highlights are less blown out, and the colors are more vibrant. But you also can't deny how good these old games look on the slide. OLED is great, but for what we are using them for, these LCD panels that Anbernic have found are pretty bloody marvelous. In terms of audio, I have noticed that you do tend to, especially when you're using the D-pad and the action buttons, you do tend to just naturally cover those speakers. And so when comparing it to this, so I didn't really notice using the Flip 2 independently, but when you pick up the slide and it's got these lovely, they are slightly tinny, these speakers over here, they are unencumbered. You know, there's nothing blocking them. And you do start to notice that, the audio sounds a bit strange here, and it's because it's like, you know, you've got this thing in the way. And that definitely is something of note. I've had a few comments about using these as music players. The slide, especially the black one, has this retro 2000s look and feel, which really reminds me of the old MP3 players. They both close and continue to play, but I would say both need a right angle headphone jack or USB-C port to make it practical to put in a pocket, although both of these are a little bit big for a pocket. A hoodie or the moon bag, a fanny pack in America, would work well for these, but both are great for around the house, and I reckon the Flip is pretty cool because of the way it shows the album art. You could put that on a countertop, and that'll be quite nice for music to a Bluetooth speaker. And lastly, Obviously, the audio quality, you're going to want to mess with the EQ a little bit because they do tend to be a little on the tinny side. Now, talking about the hinges, we are talking about two very different beasts here. We've got a slide function and a hinge function, like T-Rex and a Brontosaurus, both effective, but both have very different diodes. There have been ramblings of cracked hinges on the Flip 2. I have noticed that it's actually a single spring mechanism, so only one mechanism on the one side, which may be problematic. It may be what's causing the varying tension between the two hinges and causing it to crack. Regardless, the slide is still early days, but Anbernic have got a good track record so far with hinges, and now this slide, I'm guessing, is going to last long, as opposed to Retroid having issues on both hinged devices that they have put out. So which one do I recommend, I hear you say, quietly in your living room, alone? Put it this way, the RG slide has gotten more playtime from me, although neither of them have ended up in my personal rotation, which is interesting. If you want more power, get the Flip. More interested in PS2, GameCube, all those sort of things looking good on a 4x3 screen? Maybe get the slide? If it were me deciding if I didn't have all these devices in my studio and I was buying one device for myself and I was spending this hard-earned $179 cash, I would probably err on the side of caution and buy the more powerful one. But with the hinge concerns now, I'm not sure. The RG slide, on the other hand, is truly unique, truly special, something that will be a talking point when you put it on the table with your friends and they ask you, what on earth are you doing playing old retro games as a 45-year-old man? As far as price is concerned, they are both around $179. I saw the slide was $189, now on sale for $179. As you know, this was sent to me by LITNXT, and I just want to mention that although their price is considerably higher, their shipping is included in the fee. And so no matter where you are in the world, that price is that price regardless of where you are in the world. So if you are in a remote area like me in South Africa, this might be cheaper from LITNXT because both of these companies send their handhelds via either UPS or DHL, and it tends to be quite expensive. So that will play a role in your choice making. Let me know which one you would choose. I must say, I was always a big supporter of the 16:9 powerful handheld. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and onwards. Retroid Pocket 5 is lovely. But I gotta say, a 4x3 powerful handheld, there haven't been a lot of those on the market up until now. Now we have one. This is very unique with its beautiful big 4x3 screen, and so all the retro systems up to PS2 and GameCube are going to look fantastic on here. And so this is highly recommended. And if you are leaning this way, I want to throw another spanner in the works. The RG477 is nearly here. It was stuck in the post. That is basically this with a more powerful chipset. So if you are on the fence, obviously more expensive, but if you want a beautiful 4x3 handheld that is just the best in the world right now, that is probably the one to go for. Reviews so far are good, and I'm about to receive mine, and I will do a live stream and a review on that shortly.